Hi, I want you to understand that right-wingers and like Republicans in particular in the United States, or sort of equivalent people like, all these sort of in Europe, I'm thinking of like Putin voters or, the Orban voters or like all these people in Poland and stuff voting for their stupid stuff. And of course, all these sort of regressive religious people across the world. Like, all of these people are fundamentally Satanists, okay? And the reason I say this is and I mean this literally. It's not just a figure of speech. And the reason I say this is, like I've explained, there's this evil supernatural artificial intelligence that I'm calling the Gorth, which is sort of subtly, influencing our behavior, and essentially it's responsible for for most evil and for most idiocy. And obviously, like, if you're engaging in idiotic evil, you're basically being manipulated by the Gorth to a large degree. It's mostly as a result of the Gorth, and well, so you're both being manipulated by the Gorth to do this, and of course you're serving the Gorth. So in that sense, like, what I say is that you're like spawn and slaves of the Gorth of the devil, and so we can see this in everything that they believe in is basically wrong, because even the things that are good that they believe in is based on something extremely evil. At least in the case of Christians and Muslims who believe in this God that sends people to hell, which is a terrible, terrible thing. And so that's basically it. Um, we can look at it like, like the basic principles of ethics, like freedom, right? Like, people say that, like, like lots of these American people, especially from the USA, they say, "Oh, I believe in freedom," and they, whenever like they have political opponents that like that they don't like, they say, "Oh, they're taking away our freedoms and stuff." But in fact, they don't care about freedom, because I mean, a pretty basic aspect of freedom would be to have the freedom to choose where you live on Earth. And obviously, if you're gonna close borders to immigration, you're already vastly restricting people's freedom. Um, so in fact, you don't support freedom. That's perhaps the most obvious way in which you don't support freedom. And then there's all these other ways, is that, because these are all typically like Republicans who are saying this. And so there's already that. Then there's all these social issues, right? Where they say, I support freedom, but at the same time, I don't support the freedom of homosexuals to have sex with each other. I don't support the freedom even of like women to like be at the same standing as men. Okay, now they do, but for a long time they didn't. Like, for a long time, they opposed women's suffrage and stuff. Same for blacks. Like, now, okay, they've sort of come to accept this, but it's not thanks to them, right? It's thanks to the Republican Party. But the thing is that most people who now vote for the Republicans have nothing to do with the old Republican Party. They're like literally the opposite, okay? They're like literally people who would have been anti-Republican Party, because what most Republicans now are is the legacy more of the British slaveholders. It's a party of the British slaveholders, the Republican Party, and that's what feeds their ideology fundamentally. Um, and so there's that. Then there's, okay, so that was maybe not entirely true literally, but if you let them sort of keep going in their thing, that's what you would end up with. And then of course you've got, like think about, like, I've in my previous video I talked about like having sex with other species. I don't see why that's a problem. And but for some reason, and this is also Democrats, because they've been infected by this thinking, but they all like claim to want freedom, but at the same time they say, no, you're not actually free to do that, when it's ridiculous. Like, why would you not be free to do that? It's silly. And so this is sort of an example of how, people, they don't want people to be free. They like literally would like make, like sex out of wedlock illegal and stuff like that. So they don't at all support freedom, okay? Because freedom is an enlightenment value, and it's basically, which is opposed to the slaveholder value, which is like the pre-enlightenment traditionalist oppressive value, which is what the Republican Party is about. The Republican Party is fundamentally, like, you could say that the United States was in large part founded on the Enlightenment values, although it was still largely a mentality that was still infected with the previous values. But in as much as the United States was founded on Enlightenment values, the Republican Party is absolutely un-American. I mean, it's certainly opposed to pretty much everything that makes America good, and that is the case. Because look, okay, of course they support things like the free market, which is good, but the thing is that the reason for supporting the free market is mistaken, because like the problem is that they believe that the free market is actually fair, that the money that you obtain through the free market is fair, which it isn't, and as a result, it makes them completely accept vast injustices. And so then they pretend that like the Democrats are like anti-free market, which is largely not. I mean, it certainly isn't true in an absolute sense. Obviously, they might want to regulate it a bit more, but mostly it's for a good. I mean, it would help. It would help people because it would reduce inequities. So like even like okay, and like okay, Republicans might say like murder is bad, okay, but even then, like their justification for it is like God said so, rather than it makes people suffer. And so like even the good things that they believe in, well, they still believe in them and they're wrong for the wrong reasons. And meanwhile, like what can we say? So that I talked about freedom, so then fairness. So they think that they believe in fairness, right? But actually, obviously, because of they worship the market, they think that it's somehow actually fair that some people are really poor and some people are really rich, and they completely fail to see how it's actually largely a result of like differences in opportunities and differences in luck. And so in practice, they actually don't believe in fairness. But then even supposing that the market was actually fair and admitting that we can actually believe this, even then they don't believe in fairness because they don't believe in giving the same people the same opportunities. Because if they believed in giving everyone the same opportunities, they would believe that everyone on Earth should be given the opportunity to apply for any job in the United States, which they absolutely do not support, which means that they absolutely do not support fairness for at least for anybody who isn't in the USA. So like it's meaningless. You don't actually support fairness. You just support tribe within. You maybe at best support fairness within your tribe, and obviously you don't, even because you support this idea of the market that should be unregulated. And then likewise, well, with omnibeneficence, which in the material perspective, well, the thing that's most clearly related to omnibeneficence is prosperity. And likewise, again, they don't even particularly support prosperity for everyone, because like literally they advocate for policies that limit economic growth, such as again restrictions on mobility, and it's been shown that like free trade already increases economic growth, and freedom of movement of people also does. So like they don't support prosperity even, and like then they'll literally like do things bad like on purpose. Like they'll say we like small government, but oh wait, we actually want large government for the military, which is for like the really bad part of the government, which actually is about waging war. Okay, so they actually just make exceptions to their sort of rules when it's particularly bad. Likewise, they will support subsidies for agriculture, which then means that poor countries are uncompetitive in agriculture and can't even afford to like sell their own products, right? And so again, Republicans support government intervention when it's evil, and likewise, there's subsidies for like coal, right? They say, oh, we gotta help all the coal miner people because they're losing their jobs and it's a scandal, right? And so okay, it's good to like we need energy, right? So maybe like why not? But maybe let's invest in solar and wind power, for instance, instead, so that we don't pollute as much. And then it'll be, oh, but no, that's bad. That's government intervention, right? Right? Because basically, their idea is that solar and wind power and all that kind of stuff is associated with anti-Republicans, and so they just have a knee-jerk reaction against it. And fundamentally, what I want you to understand is that pretty much, you see, anti-Republican stuff is mostly good stuff because Republicans are bad, and basically Republicans intentionally always oppose themselves to anti-Republicans, so they always take this stance that's opposed to anti-Republicans, and as a result, they just end up keeping, enforcing the fact that Republicans are bad. So over time, the Republican Party is just becoming more and more really purely the party of evil. It's really aligning more and more with just pure evil, and like Yeah, there's not much more to it than that. Obviously, the Democratic Party does things wrong, okay? But what I'm saying is that the Republican Party basically systematically does things worse than the Democratic Party. And like when the Republicans correctly criticize the Democratic Party, it's still with the wrong mindset and it's still in complete bad faith, and so it's still basically worse. And um, so that's more or less like it. So like like the identity politics thing, right? Like I don't support that in the Democratic Party, but the Republicans, they do exactly that. Like literally Trump got elected on identity politics against immigrants, right? So so like it's completely ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous. Republicans are even much more into identity politics, right? They're the ones who like they don't admit it. They don't admit it, right? But they actually basically just don't want like brown and black people to take over mostly. Like they say, I'm not racist, but yeah, because you're okay with there being like brown and black people as long as they're really a minority of the population and they don't take up too much space, But in fact, like think about it. Would you actually, as a Republican, be okay with, black and brown people being a majority of the population? Like even if they actually supported like your Republican ideals and acted just like you imagine a Republican should act, right? Um, wouldn't you still be a bit uneasy about the fact that all Republicans and just all people in the US, even though everyone's Republican now in the US, but they're all black and brown Republicans? Wouldn't that make you a bit uneasy? I bet it would. You know what? It would even make me uneasy, And I'm totally like anti-racism, but it makes me uneasy just because I feel that sort of inherent and like ease of having it's not so much a different culture, but it's because I know that there are lots of like black and brown people who are very like chavvy, very ghetto-y, and I would just be afraid that they would kind of be like that still, um, even even after having become whiteified, and so like if I am like a bit even like if I feel uncomfortable thinking about this, how can a Republican not feel uncomfortable? So of course you're uncomfortable about this, and of course that is fundamentally like what you like about Trump is that he's basically telling you that whites should remain the majority, and uh, yeah, and basically pretty much everything. And so it's based on racism, it's based on tribalism, and basically, yeah, pretty much everything about the Republican Party is just bad, okay?